and welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you are enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White. Welcome to anyone who's here for the first time, and welcome back to those of you who have visited our virtual home before. For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held our events in the Glad Day Bookshop, and while we await our triumphant return, we are delighted to rediscover the joys of community every month right here on YouTube. And we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Like we mentioned, our theme today is discovery or rediscovery, and it's impossible to engage with a subject like discovery without acknowledging its colonial elements. In her essay, Dark Matter, Haudenosaunee writer Alicia Elliott writes that when Turtle Island was discovered, approximately 1/5 of the world's human population made their homes here at the time. This is a direct quote. Not including all the species of animals, plants, birds, and fish those people cared for. It takes a certain kind of arrogance to assume an entire continent didn't exist before you chose to see it. Discovery and rediscovery as terms are still linked to this legacy. In current day, unmarked graves continue to be discovered near former residential schools. Many Canadians are discovering the atrocities committed by the government and settlers across Turtle Island, but of course this too has been long known by Indigenous communities. These are crucial to acknowledge, and we've talked about these points in previous events. So I'd like to shift direction and talk a little more about self-discovery or rediscovery. In one of Alicia's other essays on seeing and being seen, she describes reading the work of Indigenous woman, Leanne Beatus Mose Simpson. And she writes, quote, "It was such an intimate and personally revelatory moment, as if she had reached out from the page, lifted my face and smiled. She can see me, I thought, she can see me." She later notes that, quote, "Reading Simpson's stories ultimately gave me permission to write my own." Due to the pervasive influence of colonialism and racism, Indigenous communities have frequently been diminished, warped, or outright erased. As a result, many Indigenous people have been stripped of their culture and heritage, but new generations are actively involved with rediscovery of their identities and are reconnecting with them and celebrating them. Take Cameron Adams's of the Norway House the Norway House First Nation and Barons River First Nation. In December of 2021, Adams launched Nihiwa Wewin, a Swampy Cree language app on Apple. Because of the residential school system, Adams's family no longer spoke this language, but he later discovered a love for it through his grandmother's gift of a dictionary and through contact with elders, and began work on this app to help revitalize the language and help others rediscover and engage with their heritage. Actively supporting projects like this, like the work of Adams and Elliott and Simpson, is crucial to the process of discovery and rediscovery for Indigenous communities. As such, we encourage you to discover their work and the work of other Indigenous creators and support in any way you can. I will drop links to the things that I've talked about, including the app, in the chat. Thanks.
And we'd also like to thank everyone who nominated Ephemera for the third year in a row for the Aurora Award in Best Fan Organizational.
That's super exciting, and it really means a lot to us and to this event. Congratulations to all the finalists also, and in particular those in our category. Stay tuned for the virtual ceremonies, which are on August 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
And now, down to business. Hey, have you seen Prancy?
No, did I just miss him? Oh, I think he was just here. I mean, did you just miss him?
He's a skeleton deer. He's not the pokaroo.
I know, just kidding. I don't know. I have no idea. where he is.
Intriguing. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for our skeletal friend. In the meantime, I'm very pleased to introduce our first reader. Usman Malik's fiction has been published at Tor.com, Wired, the Center for Science and Imagination at Arizona State University, and several years' best anthologies, including the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy Series. He has been nominated for the World Fantasy and Locus Awards and has won the Bram Stoker and the British Fantasy Award. Usman's debut book, Midnight Doorways, Fables from Pakistan, won the 2022 Crawford Award from the International Association for the Fantastic and Arts and was on Washington Post's 2021 list of best new science fiction and fantasy collections. And it was recently nominated for an Ignite Award. It is available through his website at www.usmanmalik.org. And welcome. We're so pleased to have you with us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. Can everyone hear me okay? Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. It's very nice to meet you all. And Ramadan Mubarak to anyone who's Muslim and fasting, because I'm not. But I was thinking I'm going to read. This is a story I do like reading. It's a story I wrote in 2013, and I know we have 10 minutes. I might maybe just do a 20-second intro. There is in Pakistan, Lahore is a city that grew very organically, like a lot of ancient cities. Lahore, some people think, is about 3,000 years old as a city. Lahore's inner Lahore, the old Lahore fort, it's a small area with 12 old Mughal gates. Some of them are pretty much gone now. But my dad was telling me the story about this narrow alley in Lahore, which is so narrow that there's a funny proverb about it, that if a man and a woman are walking and they come into the alley together, there's nothing left but for them to get married. So it's a kind of an old funny saying. But when my dad told me about this alley, I wanted to write a story set in it, and that led to this particular story called Ishq. Ishq in Arabic, Farsi, and Urdu means love. There is no direct translation into English. The shades of meaning are lost. But the story is called Ishq, and I'm going to begin. They whispered, Parveen is in love with the Shakargandi vendor. Figures, said the shocked neighborhood women. Fitting that the girl with polio, the 17-year-old with the face of an angel and the leg of a hobbled horse, who stood at her window every night staring into the ghostly depth of narrow alley, would steal glances at the bright-eyed boy with muscles sharp and confident in his back and a smile on his lips. When Hashim went with his basket of steamed sweet potato up the alley, yodeling at the top of his voice, Shakargandi wala, many a middle-aged lady sighed dreamily and leaned out of her window to watch him go. Come taste my wares, his lilting young man's voice teased. Come take a bite of my sweet potatoes. And they wanted to go, wanted to take their drawstring purses, abandon the baby carriage in the hall with its shit-stained linen, abolish all principles of a vaguely understood domesticity, and run screaming after the sing-song boy. Wait, oh, please wait. One packet of your shakargandi, please. Stay a moment, won't you? No, you're charging too much. Leave my alley now, you lying scumbag. But throw me over your shoulders and take me with you. Such sins that our daydreams are made of. The women watched the sweat of Hashim's labor trickle down the brown lobes of his exquisite ears, watched his bare chest shine with summer heat. And in the evening, they'd gather in the cool, sprawling gardens near Mosque Wazir Khan and make fun of the boy. Who would ever go with him? They'd ask each other, wide-eyed, and laugh nervously. Who would go with this lanky, young, beautiful fool who never stopped grinning? Seemly then that Parveen was the answer. The pale girl whose high, gloomy room looked down upon the alley from a dusty window. Every evening she leaned out, red and yellow bangles slipping down her willowy arms until they shone in the dark like jewels. They clinked above the din of the street, Kanak Kanak, a soul song borrowed from centuries of Punjabi lore, and the girl's eyes would be restless and lustreless until they riveted on the boy pedaling toward her house. Hashim's route was fixed. Each morning he biked down the alley, navigating the narrowest points on foot. Come dusk, he walked his bicycle up, smiling, yelling to laborers and shopkeepers returning home to try his shakargandi. He had a sweet, affecting voice, and when he was not hawking his merchandise, he sang Sufi love verses that pealed in the night like bells. Ranjha ranjha kar di hun main aape ranjha hoi. Everywhere I turn, I see Ranjha. So long I've chanted Ranjha Ranjha, I've become Ranjha myself. Call me Ranjha, sisters, don't call me Heer no more. Carefully, he'd decorate his wicker basket with shakargandi. Blossoms of sweet potato wedges sat skewered on toothpicks ringed with slices of lemon, a presentation to tempt the most jaded taste buds, and the people of Narrow Alley responded. They gathered around, waited for him to sprinkle chaat masala over their purchase, and munched the shakargandi all the way home. It was on one such night when the boy clattered down the alley, good naturedly tinkling his bell at pedestrians, that he happened to glance up into the mounting black. A stick figure stared down at him, circlets of light at its wrists. Their eyes met, the bangles chimed, a new dark surged, and the sweet potato vendor of Narrow Alley never looked away again. After cancer flooded my mother's brain, Ammi brimmed with stories. The tale of the girl in the window and the shakargandi vendor of Narrow Alley was one of them. These stories poured from Ammi's lips with a sick urgency, pieces of her past stitching together until a rich tapestry of her life shone brilliant before my eyes. Stories before Dad and suburbia and Florida and migration, of a youth spent in old Lahore near Mosque Wazir Khan in an alley believed to be the narrowest habitable street in Pakistan, where people came and went like thieves slipping through the night. Why? I guess you wanted them remembered, wanted the wholesomeness of their truth, their old world strangeness to carry on, no matter how unlikely they seemed. At first, Dad worried. He wasn't sure how much was too much for a 15-year-old born and bred in good old US of A, but he trusted Ammi and he loved her. Loved her haunted black eyes, her nervous laughter, her cafe au lait hands, which she painted with henna every Eid. Ammi was crazy about henna. She knew a woman who knew a Desi woman who was a graduate of Rollins College and the finest henna artist in Florida. This lady prepared her own dye by drying, milling, and sifting henna leaves, then mixed the dry powder with lemon juice, rainwater, and red wine. To this paste, she added eucalyptus and lavender oils to produce rich, scented green-brown henna that she packaged in plastic cones. Ammi's adulation of this artist began with an accidental meeting, but soon she was visiting her every few months and they became friends. Ammi loved the smell of her handiwork. She said it reminded her of Lahore's flower gardens and lush lawns in the summer. When Ammi died, the henna artist came and calligraphed Iqbal's legendary poem, Love Teaches Me the Etiquette of Knowing Myself, on Ammi's torso and her shriveled arms and hands. The orange and golden hues filled the funeral parlor with my mother's scent. Even after they took her away, the perfume lingered. It made Dad weepy and volatile for months. Ammi grew up in Teddy Gully in Old Lahore. You ask old Lahoris about Teddy Gully and they will laugh. They'll say the architect of this part of Old Lahore hated fat people and designed this 200 feet long alley so it tapers. As you walk down, it narrows until at its tightest it becomes a foot wide and the houses on either side touch foreheads like longing lovers. The narrow alley dilates, leads down a gentle slope to a network of crisscrossing streets, and finally opens to the hustle and bustle outside Mochi Gate. Where did homeowners park their cars? I said. Ammi smiled. She was sitting in the wicker armchair on the lanai, bathed in pink gold afternoon light. This was her last summer. In 2 months, she would be dead, and she meant to soak all the heat she could before the underground took her. This was the 60s, she said. A green anole lizard clung to the patio screen a few feet away. The dewlap at its throat pumped, and Ammi watched the blood red sack bulge against its pebbled skin. Nobody in Narrow Alley owned cars. Once these houses were owned by rich merchants and innkeepers, but the Independence War of 1857 against the British left these Muslims and their descendants destitute. Although many had bicycles, she added, and these were wheeled through the alley and heaved up inside. Could you get stuck? I said. Anyone ever get stuck in Narrow Alley? I laughed at the absurdity of the image. But she was nodding, serious. A dirt road 2 streets down, a farmer lived there. One of his Sahivali cows escaped from the yard and was chased into the alley by a bunch of children waving sticks. They prodded the panicked animal on until it reached the narrowest part, and there it wedged. For hours it struggled, lowing and terrified, unable to retreat or move forward. It took the owner and his brothers 2 hours and 20 feet of rope to drag it out. Flayed in many places by chipped tiles and brickwork, the bleeding creature bellowed until it seemed there was nothing in the alley that night but pain. God, that's awful. Yes, she said, then added, the children were beaten well. I'm going to stop here. I think we're about 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, I have a new place to visit. I love the vividness of the detail, both sensory and also the emotional detail. Thank you so much. What a way to start the night. All right.
It's such an engaging reading. Such an engaging reader.
Any news from Prancy?
I have no idea. Let's see.
I think he sent a note.
Oh, right. He sent a note.
I think you have it.
I found it. He did send a note. Dear Ephemera friend, D-E-E-R, because Prancy can't resist
He's
a pun.
a dear. It's funny.
I've gone to rediscover my purpose, to find me, answer these riddle 3. Love, Prancy.
And I've got the first riddle. Okay, here's how the first riddle goes. We cannot speak, but tell a tale. Our insides are all dry and pale. With us, you'll never be alone. We have a spine, but not one bone. Well, that's a pretty tricky riddle.
I don't know. Maybe our friends in the audience can help us. They're usually pretty good at that.
We have the best friends. They're so smart. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time, though. We cannot speak, but tell a tale. Our insides are all dry and pale. With us, you'll never be alone. We have a spine, but not one bone. Well, if you have a guess, you can tell us in the YouTube chat or on Twitter. Maybe we can find our skeleton deer friend.
In the meantime, I am pleased to introduce our next guest. M. Dial is a queer, triracial, chronically ill poet, grower, and educator born and raised in Ohlone land in the Bay Area of California and currently lives in Toronto. A 2022 Kundiman Fellow and recipient of the 2020 PEN Canada New Voices Award and the 2019 Mary C. Moore Poetry Award. Her work has also appeared or is forthcoming in the Literary Review of Canada, Tinderbox Poetry Journal, Sonora Review, and elsewhere. Welcome, Em.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to share some poems and space with you all today. A lot of my current work is kind of at the intersection of digital culture, racial politics, and like talking about climate change and apocalypse. So a lot of the poems today will be kind of in that mix. This first poem is called Lil Michaela Contemplates My Freckles. For those of you who don't know, Lil Michaela is a CGI influencer and musician. Little satchel of sachets, little galaxy of mud, little spots the envious turn to needle or pen for, little breath of confused dust, little littles, chameleon torch, hammock of fruit flies asleep. You are us by way of constructed face, by way of features designed for emulsion, designed for stardom without question. I can teach you the astronomy. What are you? A cyborg, remember? You designed me. Repeat it in every song and they'll let you keep them. Your little mask of ambiguous garnish, above your lips, below your eyes, all features of acceptable width. Cherish it, that clout cloud, that algorithm of melanin, that face precious in its wash, whereas precious comes from Latin pretiosis, costly, your most profitable feature, and theirs. Yeah, speaking of CGI, this next poem is a love poem, forgive me, and it's called Because You Love Minions, I Opened My Eyes to It. It being how strands of cartoon hair aren't unlike corn silks or piano strings or fingers across the surface of a lake, or most things I've been eager enough at one point to call beautiful. Gru, Kevin, and Bob and Stuart, hideous creatures made gorgeous from your eyes witnessing them. A yellow pest turned into a parade, an event, perverse fondness for its own sake, for the bower bird in you, the nest you spin of garish beasts, your delight ricocheting across your ribs makes me want another day, alive, clawing for something so neon and eager to please that I might call it a reflection. So alien and ugly and punch-drunk, I forget the meaning of punishment. What a blessing of peculiar spillage and spoil. Your left hand holding the what of love, your right hand clutching the how, the why left to bother the floor. I remembered that day, scrolling over those overalled terrors, their obtuse and pixelated half-moon smiles, that I can be so absurd and adored, that I can notice a clump of car-greased snow on the sidewalk and not stop to question why its shape makes me think of a small foot of a child I may one day call odd and mine. All right. Yeah, I think a lot of my work recently is kind of trying to find love and hope in this confusing world of ongoing apocalypse, and trying to sort of self-discover and self-define in the context of so many systems of oppression. So this next poem is kind of a lighthearted take on that. It's called Kourtney Kardashian Announces Her Autosexuality. Cringe compilation, pixelated headline, thousands of bleary animals clunk over a new word during their morning scroll, new prefix sitting there as a threat. Could it be me? Auto as in mobile. Man sits under his red car near orgasm on TLC, and we all slip the spectacle into our cheek for a later conversation. She jacks off to her own blackface IG selfies. Does it even count if her lips that she wants to kiss so bad aren't even hers in the first place? The article says we are all a little bit autosexual. Queen Court lowers the drawbridge into the LGBTQ plus community to anyone brave enough to slip a finger down there, or slip into lingerie, or slip on the wet bathroom tiles, distracted by the way the wet strands of hair might suction to the neck, one who might stare in the mirror at their ends, not wanting to let go. What they never said was Narcissus had a whole world of soap opera right there on the lake's surface. I could have watched the woman with my same name orgasm in my bed 1,000 times, her wet turn to ours because of the way I desire it to be mine, because of the way our faces and strands of hair might be indistinguishable if light were allowed to project us upon some still water, because of the way she said, they always think I'm part Asian and the well of us dried up, because of the way years later, when I finally met someone whose blood twinned mine, I poured her under my paparazzi flash, my thumbs milking my phone for a drop of proof. Do I want to be her or be on her? Is this a mirror or a mirage? Could it be the dye rattle in the cup and out come the same boxes checked on the form? Let me see you under the light. What phenotypes were pegged into your gorgeous potato head? How hypocritical of me to slap the wrists of boys who call me their Weblasian dream and dream up another me poised on a pedestal. Still I lust, the way a pond lusts for a ripple, the way lonely lusts for a disturbance. All right. This next poem is based on the myth of Genbu, also known as the Black Warrior, who in Japan guards the Northern Gate and is represented by a tortoise, which represents women wrapped with a serpent or a snake around her, which represents a man. So this poem's called Genbu Explains My Gender to Me. Tortoise scale and tongue, allowance to govern the sky. Femininity, a lump in the serpent's belly, standing opposite vermilion bird, coughing flame, black as good soil. Two parts so intertwined, we have one name. Yin and yang, too simple for our brood. Built for longevity, morsel of fang. If you know, you know. Let me share with you a fable. I was written into womanhood by design, surrounded by death as my only possibility. And so I took the snake as mine, subsumed him around my flesh, making me unkillable. I sit in the sky. I fight at my northern gate. I never die. I never die. I'll make you one of my own. Say it again. We'll live forever. All right. And this last poem is inspired by two activists who I very much admire, Yuri Kochiyama, who is, or was rather, a Japanese American activist, and Malcolm X, both of whom were great friends. Malcolm X actually, Yuri held Malcolm X's head as he died. Yeah, they were great friends. They happened to share a birthday that I also share with them. So this poem is sort of speculating about if the three of us were to ever meet on our birthday. And it's called Yuri Kochiyama, Malcolm X and I share our birthday cake and don't talk about the bullet, May 19th, 2034. Like the bullet, all my entry points are wrong. Do you feel a year further from your corpse? Or if you say the word solidarity enough times, can you vacuum shrapnel from a chest? So I stay buttercream lip strapped, silent like a 45 through sponge. Malcolm succumbs to a forkful. Yuri heals the burning of a candle. I cradle a bite on my tongue like the head of a passing friend. Here, me and Harlem's grinningest bowls. Here, the trowels and my own clumsy feet. Here, coalition building and its too soon love child. Here, one day of 365. Two Knesset mavericks, three American nightmares. I lick my plate clean. I dare for a celebration that is only saccharine, for any cake plate other than her wet palms. Malcolm moves his mouth to speak. I eject like a child, like anything but a sawed-off shotgun. Why aren't there any pictures in which you two are together and both with more birthdays to come? Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for that. April is, of course, National Poetry Month, so we're extra excited to have you here with us tonight. And honestly, I felt like we just listened to music for the last 10 minutes. The work with the sound and the imagery, I just felt like a tumble and all of it.
Just incredible work. Wait, we answered the riddle, I think.
Yes, we sure did.
Lots of audience members knew.
And the answer is, drum roll, please. The answer is books.
Books.
Look at those spines and no bones.
Oh my gosh. That is just the kind of fun that I like, rediscovering common words. And it looks like Prancy has given us a second riddle already. So here it is. I begin by breaking, and I never fall. And I always end in Y.
I feel like these answers are gonna like build one atop the next.
I think that might be true. That's the cunning one expects from Prancy. Let us hear your answers in chat, or read your answers.
Or on Twitter. And while you contemplate that very difficult riddle, it's my very great pleasure to introduce our next reader, Marisca Pichette. Marisca Pichette is a queer creator of monsters and magic. She has work appearing in Strange Horizons, Fireside Magazine, Plenitude Magazine, Uncharted Magazine, Pseudopod, and Podcastle, among others. A collector of bones and cool rocks, she lives in Western Massachusetts on the ancestral lands of the Pocumtuck and Abenaki peoples. Welcome, Marisca. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm going to be reading a short flash story that is currently in the current issue of Fireside, and also a poem that's in the current issue of Apparition Literary Magazine. Both of them will be free to read next week on those websites. So I believe Katie's going to drop some links after I'm done. So the story and the poem are both thinking about all of the things that are going on and provide a little bit of a meditative escape. So the story is called At the End of Purple Meadow Road. There is an arbor of wisteria. I tend it in the summer and sit underneath its naked branches in the fall. Lichen decorates the bench to the left, moss the bricks to the right. My bare feet leave depressions in the moss. The paths have no neat ends, winding between juniper and yew, under arching rhododendron and hunched lace maple, around obsidian cairns and quartz bird baths. I laid the paths myself, selecting sea glass, bone, and fossilized wood to form their mosaic. Shells, snail, ammonite, cicada, articulate their edges. When I walk along them, I walk parallel, my feet on moss and soil and grass. To disturb the paths would be to ruin the remains of the creatures I once cherished. I still cherish them, you know. You know when you see me walking beside their exquisite corpses, stopping to study contours, iridescence. You know when I hike up my skirt and kneel in the topsoil, my apron full of remnants. Some paths lead to trees and tree houses. Some lead to a meadow of lavender. This, of course, is my road's namesake. In between lavender stalks, milkweed releases its intoxicating perfume. In April, monarch butterflies turn the air ochre and black. I'm easily spotted from the road. You don't have to cross the field to see me, arms outstretched, pockets distended with dead things. I'm usually humming or laughing at the season. The colors I wear trail from my hair and my wrists. My apron strings are decorated with ribbons and wire. My ankles jingle with exoskeletons. I hang butterfly wings from my ears until the sun turns them to dust. You may be thinking at this point that there is nothing here besides my garden. There you would be both right and wrong. A bed of ajuga and violets surrounds my house on the edge of Purple Meadow Road. Its walls are green with algae. I have planted myrtle on the roof and lilac by the door. Inside, my house is just one room. You may be surprised to see that I grow no plants here. My shelves are covered instead with stones, pumice, flint, chalk. Fragments of the earth unearthed in my garden. I touch them every morning and in the evening. From my windows, I can see the forested hills in the east, my garden in the west, my garden in the south, Purple Meadow Road in the north. I know you are wondering. My garden is large, it hugs my house. My house is small, its windows are narrow. The road is distant but visible each time someone drives by, dust and rumbling distorting the air, lavender and milkweed swaying as butterflies take flight. I am not isolated here at the end of the road, at the end of the meadow. I write letters to my living friends. There is Zilpha, whose house rests on the edge of a field of mountain laurel. Eudora writes to me from a cottage surrounded by fiddleheads. Bertaline cultivates a garden of nightshade. Permelia corresponds often from the shade of a willow grove. and Orpha, her windows crowded with cattails. Mountain Laurel Path, Fern End, Nightshade Circle, Willow Drive, Cattail Avenue. Their letters come to me and collect on my windowsill, sealed with wax and sap. Sometimes letters become lost. Is that what brought you here to the end of Purple Meadow Road? I read their letters on my bench, in my garden, sitting in the middle of lavender and milkweed and butterflies. We all write about our roads, gardens, meadows, and swamps. We all write about seasons that try us. We all write about mornings that shimmer. We all write about our happiness, our sorrow. We all write. To each other, to ourselves, to you. I have never read a word that wasn't written by hand from a woman I know deeper than myself. When all my letters are sent and my thoughts continue to flow, I write to my garden. I write to the bodies that form its paths, the bodies that root in its soil, the bodies outside of my own. And yet, always, they find their way to connect with mine. In touching, I am touched. In seeing, I am seen. In writing, I am written. Was it a ribbon that brought you here? Color on the breeze? There are words there too, if you can read them. At the end of Purple Meadow Road, I have lived as long as the butterflies and longer than the lavender. My end is much the same as Zilpha's and Vertaline's. Quiet and not. Still and very much alive. Our homes are often overlooked. The road is within sight. Butterflies adorn the air like autumn leaves given fresh life. One thing, I have the power to keep nothing living. Everything that grows must remain outside of my house. It must be clear then that I do not grow as I pass between the lilacs that guard the door. All I carry is static, fragmented. As a guardian of life, I am permitted only to hold broken things. And you, standing before me, fractured. Are you a broken thing looking for gold to fill your cracks? We all write about this too. Exiled at our ends, listening without being heard, holding without being held. Letters connect us like webs. Paper is a broken tree, ink a broken petal. Oh, Eudora, Orpha, Premilia, I write to you, to all my friends who live surrounded by life we cannot touch, to you at the end of a wrong turn. I fill my pockets with bodies and pieces and words, and I love my brokenness more than any garden, any path, any end of any road. And next, I'm going to read a short poem, which is called While Alice Sleeps in Wonderland. When Alice falls, I place a ribbon in my book and walk through flowers too wild for gardens. When my sister dives headfirst into another world, I take down my hair and face the woods. I don't have time, an hour at most, before Alice returns, taking the door she opened and shutting it again. I leave the flowers behind with my book and dear little Alice. In the woods, I breathe again. So little time. I find your clearing and coat, gray fur, red trim. I follow your footprints, my breath short and wanting. Your cottage shines even in daylight, bright and open and smelling of sugar and you. Shedding your coat, I go inside. Alice floats in a sea of her making, and I find you at your grandmother's oven. We have so little time, Alice growing big again, entangled in houses too small. Our clothes cover the floor, and I count the minutes before this world closes, before the cards collapse. Alice is playing croquet. I am tangled in fingers and sheets that smell of wolves. Alice is angry. I am in love. Before the court gathers, you kiss my left breast and braid my hair, leaving me so I won't see how you disappear. Under the apple tree, I retrieve my book, face flushed, heart curling to see you, aching to lose you again. When Alice climbs back into sleep, her head in the sunshine, I know you've gone. Your world closed, your cottage lost. I no longer fit in holes in the ground, and mirrors are too shallow for women like us. Alice, though, Alice is quick. Alice is small. Her dreams grow large enough to carry ours another day. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just like a sucker for reimagined fairy tales. And both pieces were amazing, and both felt very fairy tale-esque. Obviously the Alice one, but at the end of the Purple Road too, we were saying in the chat, it feels like a spell. Cool. Amazing. This is such a great night, but I think we need to check in on our skeleton deer friend.
Yes, it was a very tough.
That was a tough riddle. What did the audience say?
The audience is very smart. Specifically, Randall Graham, former guest of ours, knew that it was day.
Amazing. Well done, team. Well done, Randall. All right, that's 2 riddles down. We've got 1 more to go. Let's see Prancy's last riddle. If I can find it. I found it. Good news, friends. My first begins gold and glitter. My second ends bell and call. My third's in the center of sad. And my fourth is the very end of end.
I need to hear that again, but I will also paste it in chat. My
Excellent.
first begins gold and glitter. My second ends bell and call. My third's in the center of sad. And my fourth is the very end of end.
And that is the last riddle. Guess the answer in the chat or Twitter, and let's see where Prancy has gone for his self-discovery.
And now for our last guest, Jael Richardson is the author of The Stone Thrower, a book columnist on CBC's Q, and the founder and executive director for the Festival of Literary Diversity, Fold in Brampton, Ontario. Her debut novel, Gutter Child, was shortlisted for the Amazon First Novel Award and is a finalist for the Forest of Reading White Pine Award. She holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Guelph and lives in Brampton, Ontario. Welcome, Jael.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Thank you to everyone who read before. It was really lovely to listen to your works and to hear such a mix of styles and genres. So I'm going to read from chapter 6 of Gutter Child. It came out in January, so I've read chapter 1 a lot. So I thought I would find something a little bit later. Basically what you need to know, Elamina is the main character. She has a single scar on her hand, and she's arrived at an academy where everyone else has 2 scars. And she doesn't think she's a gutter child, but they know she's a gutter child. And she's learning a little bit about what that might mean, that there's a debt associated with her life. And this scene is her first encounter with Ida Mason, who is the first time she's meeting a woman who looks like her. The basement of the main house is gritty and cold, with concrete floors, stone walls, and pipes that hover low. At the end of a long hallway, past the rumble and heat of the laundry facilities and the clanging of the maintenance department, I find Ida Mason's living quarters and a studio that looks like a small version of the salons Mother went to in Cape Town. Her mother has passed away and was an adopted mother who's a mainlander. So she was raised on the mainland, and that's also part of it. You should probably know. A black leather chair with a metal base is bolted to the floor in front of a mirror surrounded in lights. And there's a small sink in the corner with a long counter covered in bottles. When I enter the room, a full-bodied woman in a gray dress appears from around the back corner, sweeping bits of hair into a pile. She has a white apron tied around her waist and a colorful scarf wrapped around her head like a crown. Miss Mason? The woman stands tall and graceful, and part of me wants to bow, but I just hang my head low and pass her the note, scratching at my scalp. My hair has grown quickly since arriving at Livingstone, but I have no idea what to do with it. Yesterday, I started pulling at the knots with a comb, hoping it would help, but I only made things worse. When I showed up at the office, Violet laughed into her hand, and Miss Templeton sent me down to the basement right away with a note. Ida, fix this. Ida reads the note and shakes her head, tossing it in a garbage bin and opening her arms wide. Baby girl, I'm glad you finally made your way down to see me. I was wondering when you'd come. I step into her slowly, and she hugs me so tight I feel swallowed in warmth. I wrap my arms around her and squeeze back, hoping she doesn't let go. You're okay. You're safe here, she says. And I sob into her shoulder, leaving dark stains on her chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Miss Mason, I say when I lift up my head, wiping my tears away with the back of my wrist. Don't be sorry, baby girl, she says, pulling me in again to show that it's really okay. And it's Ida in here, just Ida, when you talk to me. I step back and she hands me her handkerchief. Well, this coat is fancy, she says, sliding her hands down the sleeves with a strange look on her face, and I don't know whether to feel proud or ashamed. But I don't know what to say. It'll help, that's for sure, she says, shrugging her shoulders. You take your help where you can get it, baby girl. I know how that goes. But you don't need all that in here, so you can hang that coat right outside the door when you come in from now on. I nod, hanging up the red coat just like she asked and settling into the chair. Never combed your own hair, have you? Ida says, touching my hair as her mouth bunches like a prune. No, ma'am, I say, trying to look anywhere but the mirror. When I was younger, I used to stare at myself for hours. I'd study my face and the strangeness of it in comparison with the faces I saw at the park and on the covers of Mother's magazines. I would gaze at every feature and I would ask myself the same questions, tilting my head this way and that to see it at different angles. Am I pretty? Am I kind of pretty or really pretty or almost pretty? How about now? When Mother asked what I was doing in the bathroom and why I was taking so long, I told her I was studying. And it was true. I was studying how I looked, creating a list of things I liked, things that made me happy or proud, like the round of my head and the shape of my eyes. I liked the way I smiled and the way my top lip slipped over my gum, like it was too big to hold inside. But eventually, I saw uneven teeth, an oversized grin, and a head that was bald like a boy's. I longed for hair like Mother's, with skin just as fair and scar-free. And I started to wash my face and brush my teeth with the lights off, or with my eyes closed, like my own face was something no one should have to see, including me. You never had a gutter woman cut your hair, Ida says, and I shake my head. Weren't there any gutter women in that town where you were raised? I watch Ida standing behind me, hands on my shoulders, waiting for me to respond. Miss Ida, you're the first gutter woman I've ever met, first one I've ever spoken to as far as I can remember. Ida closes her eyes and shakes her head before clearing her throat. Now then, you're going to have to tell me what it was like being out there with all them mainlanders instead, she says. I shrug. It was different. Well, I figured that much, baby girl. When you've lived something no one else has, you have to tell folks what it's like as though they can't see and they're asking you what red looks like. When someone asks you for a picture, you got to spell it out in color for them, she says. I try to think of how to explain Cape Town, but I can't find the words. How long have you been here? I say. Left the gutter when I was 5 years old for the academy track. Spent 10 years at North End Academy, which is a place I don't care to remember, that's for sure. I worked down the way for a bit until Mr. Gregors hired me. Been working for 20 years, baby. So 30 years on the mainland is my guess, though I'm sure my debt manager could count it better. 30 years. Sounds like a whole lot, I know, but the truth is it doesn't feel that long at all. Besides, I got it real good here, she says, with a toothy smile that's full of gaps and one tooth that's mostly brown. How much longer till you're done? Till you get redemption freedom, I say. She takes a comb and pulls it through my hair, and when a piece of the comb breaks off, she grabs another from the pile and tries again. I'll be done in 20 or so, I think. But truth is, I'll probably work as long as I can. Maybe I'll buy a house in the city and come in with the mainland decos, she says. But I got to keep going. Why? I got family who are counting on me. I was the one that got out to make the way. When I got redemption freedom for myself, I get it to give. When I get redemption freedom for myself, I get to give it to one other person. I figure I can get one of my grandnieces out, hopefully one with a baby. That way I can get 2 more generations out at the same time, set our family up right for the future. But there's still others. There's always others. Don't think I could enjoy my own life knowing they're still in the gutter, that I didn't do everything in my power to help, she says. In Cape Town, you aren't allowed to work until you're 18, and even then it's optional, I say. Mainlanders can't start until 18. It's the law. It's the law that you can't work, she says. And when I nod, she shakes her head, like the unfairness of it is almost too much. I tell her about the kids being kids legislation and the youth enjoyment opportunities, how mainland kids are encouraged to explore, and how mother used to take me to Cape Town museums during the day when other kids were at school, where they'd let us in at twice the price. Ida shakes her head again, her jaw stiff with anger. I feel a sharp pain in my scalp as she pulls the plastic comb through my hair a little harder. Do you miss your family? I say through gritted teeth, and Ida nods. Most days I miss them fine, just in passing. But some days I'll admit it's hard, knowing they're there and I'm here, that the little ones don't know anything about me except what I write down in letters. But I try not to worry because nothing good comes from it. All worrying can do is bring a sickness that starts deep inside. And I got no time to be sick, baby girl. I got to stay well here most of all, she says, tapping her finger against the side of her head. Besides, I'd rather be here making away than waiting in the gutter. Can't complain about that. But there's a lot she could complain about. And I think about telling her that it's another way mainland life is different. Mainlanders get up in arms angry when things don't go their way. And when they complain loud enough, the mainland government usually does something about it. The year before I was supposed to attend Cape Town Elementary, the school board established tests to ensure that all students were on track and making good progress. The Mothers Alliance made signs and yelled outside the board offices and in the lobby at City Hall. They said standardized tests were the equivalent of work and should be against the law, and the tests were banned, just like they wanted. 1 year later, those same people grabbed new signs and stood in front of Cape Town Elementary to protest my enrollment in a school that had always been exclusively for mainlanders, in a town that prided itself on the same. Keep the mainland for mainlanders, they said. And when Mother dragged me out, never to return, they got their way again. I ask Ida if there's a way to change things for her or for her family, but she shakes her head. It doesn't work that way for us, she says. She sprays my hair with water, picking at the tips with a few sharp tugs, and I try not to let her see how much this hurts. I wondered about you project cases, how you would do out there with no one, Ida says, scowling at my hair before starting again. I only got 5 years in the gutter with my family, but those 5 years mean everything to me, especially now that I've been gone for so long. I can't imagine what it was like to have no one, to know nothing. I tell her about a photograph of a gutter family I saw in a library book before I could read, how I ripped the picture out and studied those faces carefully for signs that we were related. I had never seen faces like mine before, and I decided they were my long-lost family. I gave them all names, and I held that photo inside one of my books until it was so thin and worn, it fell apart in my fingers. Is that all you know about your own? That picture, Ida says, with her eyebrows pushed down toward her nose. Mr. Gregor's told me things, and Mother taught me history for school, I say. Don't believe everything those mainlanders tell you, she says, shaking her head like I'm making her tired and sad. And don't believe what you read in those books either. She stops working and takes a long, deep breath, looking down at the hair that's still tightly packed and knotted, like she's ready to give up. Please don't. You just can't, I say, my voice wobbling as my eyes filled with tears. Baby girl, what's wrong? Please don't cut it. Baby girl, this side here is just knots on knots. I look in the mirror horrified, and when she turns the chair, I drop my head and press my palms against my face. What's wrong, baby girl? When my hair got too long or too hard to comb, Mother just cut it off. She always cut it off, and I didn't know how to stop her. But I want it back, I say, tears thick in my throat. Sharing this feels like betrayal, like I'm turning on Mother. She lived alone because of me. It's only hair, I told myself, but it always felt like something more. You ever met your real mother? Ida says, hands on my shoulders. Ever seen a picture of her? I shake my head, unsure whether real mother is a fair term. I've never known how to feel about the woman who gave me up to be raised by a mainlander. I've tried to just feel grateful to Mother for giving up everything to love me. A girl learns who she is from the woman she sees loving her, Ida says. She learns what's good and what's lovely about herself, and the further apart she is from that woman, and the more different they are, the harder it is for her to know what to love about herself, especially when everything around her tells her she's not right. You know what I'm saying, baby girl? I nod, and Ida smiles. I remember watching my mother twist her hair. I remember her weaving her fingers through my roots. I remember what she told me when I left. You are beautiful and strong, Ida Mason, the loveliest of lovelies. You have been chosen, she said. Ida turns my chair back to face the mirror, leaning over so our faces are close together, so we're staring at our reflection. You are lovely, Elamina, really lovely, she says. She repeats those words over and over, and I cry so hard my whole body shakes because I desperately want to believe her.
Wow, thank you so much. What a way to end the night. I love in the dialogue, you're doing like 3 things at once. It's world building, it's character, it's backstory. Just in awe of that kind of like such smart, incisive writing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and I think our evening is coming to an end. We just have one riddle to sort out. And the answer to that third and final riddle is...
Ariella got it in chat. Glad.
Right. Congratulations, team. We got them all, but wait a second. Where's Prancy?
He's just here. Oh, wait, I think there's another riddle in store for us. You said the answers might build on each other, right?
I did. So we had books and day and glad. Where's Prancy gone? Yell at your screens. Yell in the chat.
He's gone to rediscover himself at Glad Day Books. How fitting, because we can't wait to rediscover that wonderful space ourselves, our usual home.
And you can get a head start by rediscovering your favorite books and authors on the Glad Day website and the websites of your other beloved independent booksellers. Might have a few leads from tonight's reading, I would say.
Just maybe. So thanks, everyone. And until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook at Ephemera Series. And please subscribe to this YouTube page. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for their funding assistance. And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fabulous readers and artists, composer Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you for our next event on May 18th, right here on YouTube. Goodbye, everyone. Good night.